Hello, welcome back to another episode of It's All Clutter with Jess Marcy. I am Jess Marcy. I am a clutter coach, and I believe that all clutter in our life is connected. A lot of the clutter and connections that we have in our lives relate to mental health, and I am so excited to bring to you a series on mental health issues and how they connect to clutter with my sister. So let me introduce Megan Zacher. She is a psychotherapist in upstate New York. She works inside of our clutter decluttering groups, and she supports our members with issues relating to the mental health side of clutter. Megan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Yeah.
Will you share with everyone a little bit of your history and experience and how you ended up talking to me about clutter and mental health on a podcast?
Well, I guess it started a long time ago, probably when we were kids. No, I'm just kidding. So I am, as Jessica said, I'm a psychotherapist. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker with my designation R, which is my psychotherapy designation. I've been in the field for, God, eons, it feels like now, working in the mental health and the addiction setting for at least 15 years. I had a really, really great career, upward into lots of great mentors, lots of great supervisors. I worked in a training hospital, which was really, really vital, I think, for where I'm at in my career at this point. And this kind of came about working with Jess several years ago when she launched Clutter Boss Academy. Clutter Boot.
Well, I did do clutter boot camp.
When you did your boot camp, yeah, the first one, and it came up pretty quickly that there's a significant link with mental health issues to clutter. And so I think that you and I had been talking about it shortly after you launched, and you were like, "Would you mind doing like an educational series?" And I said, "Absolutely, it's not a problem." And I think it quickly became a thing. And so for the past 2 years, we have I get on a call every other week. Every week depends on the year, depends on the month. And we do some education, and I think it's been very, very helpful for people to recognize how much their clutter is associated with other mental health issues. I think it's, clutter is often a symptom. I think we hear that a lot, especially through the Clutter Boss Academy. But it truly is. It is a symptom, usually for a larger things that are happening related to your mental health. And so
And
that's
actually,
where
can
I
I
come
stop you for a second, Megan? That's talking about clutter as a symptom. It's a very different way of approaching clutter than most other people. Many people consider clutter to be a lack of organizational skills, which is
Yes,
totally incorrect. So, can
absolutely.
you talk a little bit more about clutter as a symptom? That I love that point of view.
I think that when you start to look at life events and everything that has happened throughout your life, and then you actually start recognizing how you're feeling, right? You look around you, and the chaos that is around you is often reflective of the chaos that's going on in your mind. But so often we don't stop and to slow down to say, what's happening with me, right? What's going on up here? What's happening? What am I feeling? What is this? What's happening for me? In this world, I think that mental health is highly stigmatized. And so, like, just like clutter is highly stigmatized, right? And so if we're struggling with our mental health, not really recognizing what we're struggling with, then we look to the clutter to be the thing that we need to fix, right? We need to fix the clutter, because once I fix the clutter, then everything else is going to get fixed. And actually, it's the opposite. It's like we really need to understand why the clutter is happening and get to the really the breadth of everything that's underneath all that clutter. Like, why is it happening? And once we understand that, then we can really move forward, really improving our mental health and working on our clutter.
So, we were going to talk about depression today as the topic of this episode, where we talk about mental health connected to clutter. What would, if you were to see somebody who said they were depressed, what would be some of the common symptoms that they would have, that they, whereas you say like clutter is a symptom, like what other symptoms would you be looking for when somebody says they're depressed, and that like, we expect to be sad, right? Like, if I'm depressed, I'm sad, but depression could look really different. So,
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, we throw the term depression around loosely in this country. I think that that often it is Well, I'm depressed. Well, what does that actually mean, right? So when somebody comes in to and says I'm depressed, we do a diagnostic interview and we actually take a look at what that means for them. So it's really a lot of what truly are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Depression is something very significant in this world. It affects a lot of people. Most people in their life are at some point in their lifetime are going to experience an episode of depression. I think that's really, really key because when we think about this, it is a significant portion of the population that does experience this at some point in their life, but sometimes they don't know what it is that they're experiencing. It's interesting, and we're going to get more into like the definition of, of depression and those symptoms that you're asking about. But I think it is important that, to recognize that women more than men more likely are going to experience a depressive episode at some point in their life. I think that's significant. I think that when
Well,
you think
also
about
because we've seen now, okay, so I've worked with in the last 2 years alone, probably about 20,000 people in across all different groups, and of those, say 20,000, I would say less than 50 are men. That's
yeah,
that's a pretty so when we talk about depression affecting women more than men, or at least being something that women will, raise their hand and say, I'm struggling with this.
mhm.
Clutter is also the impact of clutter in your life is, as far as I can tell, more has a much more dramatic impact on women as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's true. I mean, typically like 1 in 6 people will experience a depressive episode in their lifetime. And that again, that is very significant. And the fact that you have seen of the thousands of people that you've seen, the majority of them are women. And so what's that about, right? And I think it's important to recognize that this does impact women more often than it does men. Depression is a very serious medical illness. I think that we often don't put enough emphasis on how serious it can be and how impactful it can be on somebody's life and in somebody's life. So when you are depressed, right, it is a change in your functioning. It's a change of feeling. It is often feelings of sadness, feelings of loss of interest in activities, but again, the big part is it's a change in your functioning. So it's a change in the way you were feeling. It's like I wasn't feeling this and now I am feeling this. So that's a significant piece of depression. So it's okay to have these ups and downs and these ebbs and flows, but when it's consistent and it's a significant change from what you are normally like and what you normally feel and what you normally experience, that's when we start talking about depression as a clinical diagnosis. So, talking about some symptoms and, what that experience might be for some people, sad, right? Sad, absolutely. Everybody's like, "Oh, I feel sad," feeling down, feeling depressed, right? Feeling blue, more often than not. So for any time where we're looking at diagnosing this, these symptoms have had to have been going on for at least 2 weeks. Loss of interest or pleasure in things that you were previously doing. So that activity that, going out every Thursday night to that group that you were participating in, all of a sudden you have no interest in doing that anymore. So it's a lack of motivation, a loss of interest. It affects your physical health, a change in appetite. It could be a weight gain, weight loss, and your appetite changes. So recognizing, has my appetite changed? A change in your sleep pattern. Sleep is really, really important. It tells us a lot about what's going on in our minds. So is our sleep being disrupted? Are we sleeping more? Are we unable to get out of bed? Are we not sleeping enough? Are we trying to fall asleep and then we can't for hours and hours and hours, and so our sleep pattern can be very, very disrupted by depression. Let's see. Feelings of guilt and worthlessness. So you all of a sudden you start feeling like those feelings become much more exacerbated. Concentrating and making decisions, being able to focus is a symptom of depression, right? When you struggle in those areas, you often people don't think like, oh my God, I'm depressed because I'm having difficulty concentrating. They just feel like, my God, why can't I find where I put my keys 2 minutes ago? Like what's going on with me? But they don't recognize that this could be a symptom of depression.
It's
Feeling
so fascinating because clutter is so connected to all of this, and I would say that the vast majority of people who we are working with have had feelings of depression for much longer than 2 weeks. And so change in appetite and change in sleeping patterns and inability to focus for a long time are often cited as reasons why we can't declutter. So ADHD, people talk about ADHD and how they're diagnosed with it, they think they should be diagnosed with it, and that's why they can't declutter, but this could also be connected to
Depression.
your depression. Um,
Mhm.
it's also really difficult to eat well and to have that appetite for actually creating wholesome food if you have a lot of clutter in your kitchen. So it becomes this cyclic problem, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
you don't have the attention to deal with your clutter. It's piling up in your kitchen. You're not eating healthy, which
Mhm.
is making you feel worse. Then your symptoms of depression are getting more extreme, and
Yeah.
the clutter is still piling up, and you
Right.
can't sleep because your bedroom has a lot of clutter in it, a lot of stuff in it. It's making you feel uncomfortable. It's just everything feels like it takes a tremendous amount of effort, and you're feeling worse and worse and worse.
Right, right. I mean, it's really what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And I don't think it really makes a difference what came first, the chicken or the
No.
egg, because at the end of the day, it's all affected by everything, right? So the clutter is affected by the depression is affected by the clutter. Everything that we're talking about is impacted by the way we're feeling and the things that are around us, And so I think that it's a really important point that you make right there, Um, Working through the depression can definitely help you start working through the clutter. Working through the clutter can help you start working through the depression.
Right,
And
there is not a right way to do this. There are
there
many
is not a right
strategies
way
that
to
can be
do this. It's
different.
like you just start somewhere, and we always talk about starting somewhere. And I think that
1
that's
minute. Do something for 1 minute.
yeah, right. Well, it can change, it can lead to the change that you want.
Yep.
Start somewhere. I think it's really important too when we talk about depression, when if somebody's saying like, I feel depressed, I feel down, obviously the very first thing that you should do is talk to a professional, right? I mean, I think that that's really important. Depression can also mimic other physical health issues, and I think that that's key too, right? So you might have other physical health stuff going on that you might not realize, and so it is important when you're feeling these feelings to go and seek medical help. Doctors will test for thyroid conditions, they'll test for vitamin deficiencies. So it is really important that you have a full workup when you're working on and looking at dealing with your depression.
So Meg, what's the first thing so when people, if you're depressed, if you feel
Mhm,
depressed and
mhm.
you don't even know where to start, and the idea of even going to a doctor sounds too overwhelming, or picking up a piece of clutter and tackling it and making a decision feels too overwhelming, what's your best advice for somebody who is in that position?
So, I think that we've seen this a lot in your group is that people really they join your clutter group because they want to do something, right? And so it's in that moment that they're feeling a slight little bit of motivation to make a change, right? They can't do this anymore. It's frustrating, so they join, right? And that's where they start to really look at the support of the group that is around them, and really they begin to be able to reflect on what's happening for them. So for somebody who has absolutely zero motivation, can't bring themselves to do anything, I mean, that's a significant concern, Jess. Like if somebody is that depressed, right?
Right.
When we talk about depression, it's kind of a spectrum. You can be mildly depressed, but you can also be severely depressed. And so there's a range. And so when you look at those symptoms, and if you're at a place where you absolutely can't move forward, right, that is need for absolute medical intervention immediately. You know, if you're somewhere in the middle of that range where maybe you join the clutter group, but maybe you joined it and you'll join a call now and then, but you're not fully ready to engage because you're just not that motivated yet, jumping on that one call maybe a week, jumping on one call a month, whatever it is that you're doing, is ultimately going to help you build on that
Or
and move
even posting
forward.
into the group, right? So we say community crushes
Right.
clutter. That's one of our little Jessisms or hashtags or whatever they are. Knowing you're not alone, that's what I have witnessed throughout all of this. Probably one of the most surprising outcomes from starting doing work with clutter on Facebook inside of groups has been the absolute power of community, and just knowing you are not alone. There are so many people
Mhm.
in the world who are experiencing what you are experiencing, and you don't need to be alone on this journey.
And often people feel that they're alone. People feel that other people don't understand what they're going through, right? And so I think that what you're saying about community is truly very, very powerful, is because you do get to experience people who are going through the same exact thing that you're going through. And it's almost like a light bulb goes off in your head. And it's like, oh my God, like somebody actually understands me. So this might be the first time in forever that you feel understood, you feel heard, you feel listened to. Somebody else on the other end gets me. And I think that what you guys do when you say post, right? Social media can be a really, really great thing. Having a private group can be a really, really great thing because it puts distance, right? When you're not ready to open your mouth or to say something out loud, you can write things. Sometimes it's a lot easier for people to go down that road versus having to be present, on the screen with their camera on saying something.
And
Um,
it's semi-anonymous also. We've actually
yeah.
some of the conversations that we've had recently inside some of the groups has been about how much closer you become to people inside our Facebook groups because of the anonymity to begin with. So you will share something that you wouldn't necessarily tell somebody who has known you for a long time because there might be judgment attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a relationship with another person and you've been in that relationship for many years and you share how you're feeling with them, there's a pattern, a history there, right?
Mhm,
And it
mhm,
might not have the outcome that you desire, but you actually can feel a lot more comfortable being somewhat anonymous in a group and sharing, knowing that you're in a judgment-free group, nobody else is going to see this, and that you are going, just knowing you're going to get support with whatever you post
mhm,
can actually open up the door for a lot more vulnerability
mhm.
and a lot more support and a lot more growth.
Right.
And just I want to just put this out there. If you are not in our groups, we have many different groups at many different price points. So this is a business, but we are in the business of helping you. There's many ways that you can get help and support through our groups, but you don't have to go through our groups. Find a group that resonates with you, in person, online, whatever it is, that
Mhm,
is judgment free, that is going to be supportive, and consider just taking that first step and joining, right? It doesn't have to be my groups, although we do have amazing groups, but there's a lot of options. Find a hobby that you like, find a group with that hobby, and find some friends and support in there. There's
mhm.
so many ways to get help and support through community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what you bring up about judgment free is really very key, right? So for so long, so many people are judged by not just the way they feel, but their clutter. If we're talking specifically about the clutter, and so the second that they start um, in an anonymous way, talking about some of the struggles that they've been going through, and when they get that feedback that is completely non-judgmental, right? It's huge. It can be very, very life changing because now what you've known your whole life of being judged based on things, people are starting to come at you differently in a very non-judgmental way. And so it allows you, like you said, to be more vulnerable and to open up a little bit more. And then hopefully it gets you to that place where you can turn your camera on. You can say, hey, this is, it's Megan here, and I want to talk to you about what's going on with me today. And for a lot of people, I think in your groups that we witnessed that has actually happened. That's been the transformation. Is that once they become comfortable, they recognize that, I'm not going to be judged for things that I say. I'm not going to be judged for the clutter that I have around me. People are supportive. They understand in a very different way than anybody else has ever understood me. They do start doing that. They start turning their cameras on. They start speaking up. They start asking questions. And then you start seeing a lot of changes within them.
My favorite is when, so this is definitely the trajectory here. You show up, you maybe like, comment,
Yeah,
then you
right.
share a post,
Hmm.
then you're on a call, but no camera on. Then one day we get to see your face, right? So it's like, oh, okay, hi, this is what you actually look like. And then eventually we actually see a physical change in the way somebody shows up now. It's not like they've lost weight or they have, dyed their hair. They look like a different person
They're a little bit
because
lighter. Their affect is a little bit different.
yes,
They're feeling a
they're
little bit
glowing.
better. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
this
think
is
that,
not overnight. This is not an overnight change.
no.
There's a misnomer about, I think, both tackling depression and tackling clutter, that it all can happen overnight. You can, have a quick fix and you can show up tomorrow morning and everything's different. But in actuality, it's taken a very long time to get to this point, and it's going to take a long time to get out of this point.
Mhm.
But every step that you make moving forward, whether it's just 1 minute of decluttering, one comment on a post, one smile, one, supporting somebody else,
Mhm.
is going to get you to that end goal faster
Mhm.
than doing nothing.
Right. And you have, I think within your groups is that what you see also is that you have people at different levels, right? Who are basically at different points in their journey with clutter, and often can reflect on what it was like for them when they first started out. I think that that's tremendously helpful for people to see that, okay, somebody else was here before too. They started at this place where I'm at right now and look where they are today. You
Well,
know,
our success stories are still in our groups, right? So it's
yes,
not like you hear a success story and never see the person again because
they remain.
they remain. It's so it's
It's the
I've heard it
supportive community, and I think that
community.
people
You can't
want,
give it up.
once they have recognized that they have made this change, that they have made such progress over however long it's been that they've been in the group, they want to help people. They want other people to have that same experience, and so they're constantly trying to pull other people up with them, which is really, really, really powerful to have that in your groups. So yeah, it's a wonderful experience for everybody to participate in. So come on, guys. Just say hi.
Just say hi. Just say hi. We genuinely want to support your journey. So, Mig, any other talking about depression, any other insights? I mean, you've worked in addictions for a very long time.
Mhm.
In some sense, keeping clutter around you can also be an addictive behavior.
It
Um,
can. Mhm.
I guess, I mean, I didn't know if we were going to talk about that, but we could talk about that.
We can definitely talk about that. I mean, yeah, I mean, clutter can be so many different things. It can be protective. I have found that a lot of times people who have a lot of clutter around them, it's really like a safety blanket. Likely for a lot of trauma that they've experienced in their life. People who have addiction issues, right? It's very, very similar. Often they also have a tremendous amount of trauma in their life, right? So you become more obsessive and compulsive about purchasing, about buying things. You can often be looking to fill a void, right? There's this emptiness that I'm constantly trying to fill. And so I often go out there and I buy things. I don't recognize that for the moment, right? It feels pretty good. Like it's, retail therapy, right? Retail therapy is amazing for about 5 minutes. And then you get home and you're like, oh, I'm just adding it to the pile. And it loses that value that it had for that very short period of time. And so
The
then we
interesting
try to
thing
get
about
into
retail
the
therapy
cycle.
as an addiction as opposed to other addictions is that it's also very easy to tell yourself that what you're doing is to benefit somebody else, right?
Sure,
So,
sure.
or what you're doing is to benefit you or somebody else. Whereas
Mhm.
like in other addictions, you know that you're not benefiting, but it's addictive, right?
Mhm,
But in
mhm.
this case, you can totally justify buying something because somebody in your family needs it, or if you buy it, your life is going to be easier. So there's a lot of justification
Absolutely.
around this sort of addictive behavior. And not that everybody with clutter has shopping addiction, but that is another big
Highly
link that we
correlated.
see.
It's definitely there's a definite higher correlation between the two. So yeah, I mean, people definitely struggle with that. You walk into a store, we've seen a various differences amongst people in the group, right? So you have people who it's the retail therapy. It's like I'm out at the store and this is going to make me feel better in this moment. And then you have people who actually walk into the store and have this compulsion to purchase and cannot walk out of the store without having to purchase something. So it's interesting the few different ways that addiction can take you. And again, not everybody has that experience. Some people don't at all. We have a lot of people who are addicted to thrift stores, right? So
Right.
it's
Or garage sales, estate sales,
yes,
um,
yeah,
Facebook Marketplace, all of that, we call it the thrill of the chase, right? The thrill of the hunt. Like,
sure, sure.
I'm gonna get a great deal.
It's,
I mean, I
the
can
yeah,
justify this because it's a great deal.
and then you justify it because it is a great deal, right? And so why do I need that T-shirt that's going to be number 4005 in my collection, right?
Like, it's
Well,
a
I got
great
it for
deal.
35 cents. So, so a lot of justification happens when you go to thrift stores, when you are looking at estate sales in a very different way than buying at full price, right? So people really, really struggle in those areas. And so the group really helps get everybody onto the same page about that and teaches you guys how to handle that.
Well, and one of the basic principles that I teach throughout all the groups is and all the work I do and always have done with my clients when I was in person in their homes and now online, stop the flow in. We're going to take a little break from
Right.
purchasing. Or even not purchasing. We're going to take a break from getting free stuff, right? We're just going to take a break from things
Right.
coming to the
Right.
house.
Right. Yeah, and it's really, really can be very difficult for some people to do that. But the second they have the support of the community behind them, they're much more likely to make that change, even if it's for a short period of time. Because once you do it for a short period of time, it's likely that it's going to get extended for a much longer period of time once they see the change that's being made. I think you also need to consider, when we talk about depression and clutter, and you need to consider what those risk factors are. What are the other factors that can play a role in depression? I think environmental factors are huge, right? I mean, we're constantly looking at environmental factors. What did you grow up in? What was your exposure to somebody else who had a clutter issue, right? What was your exposure to trauma, to violence, to just stressful environments? um, Poverty, right? Poverty is a huge factor that plays a
Yeah.
big role in depression, but also in clutter. You have people who have grown up in impoverished situations who now have access and the means to go ahead and purchase things for themselves. And it's very, very difficult to let go of those items once they do that because of the environments that they grew up in. So there's a lot of factors that play into both the depression and the clutter, right? And so here you
We're
go,
all
we're talking about
connected.
that
All
cycle, right? They
clutter.
go hand in hand. Genetics can also play a huge role in depression. If you have a family member who is clinically depressed, you are much more likely to also suffer from depression at some point in your life. I mean, that is a fact. That is a very well studied fact. So looking at that, what were you growing up with? Were you growing up with a depressed parent, a depressed sibling? What was that like for you, and how can that potentially affect you as well? So thinking about, your biochemistry, chemicals in your brain, right? Sometimes there's an imbalance, and that's all there is to it. And you have to recognize that. And so seeing a psychiatrist can really be helpful in terms of medications and getting on medications that can fix that imbalance that you are experiencing. So there's lots and lots of different factors that play into the depression and the clutter as well. So personality, what are you, an optimist or are you a pessimist? Is the glass half empty or is it half full? How do you see the world? Can really affect the way you experience depression and clutter, right?
Yeah.
If the world is wonderful and everything's great, and you have a very high self-esteem, you're less likely to suffer from depression and from a clutter issue. True story. But if you experience a lower self-esteem, then you're easily overwhelmed, then you're much more likely to struggle with periods of depression.
And that's okay. That's not an inherently bad thing. If you can get
No.
support around that, then that's
Mhm.
totally okay. We love you for who you are. We're gonna work with you.
Absolutely, no matter what. Again, everybody's road is different, right? Everybody's road is different, but the people around you who have experienced similar things can really be helpful. So, and that's where the help comes in. Um, I think we talk about being in the winter right now. We're in the middle of the winter, right? The world is, at least in upstate New York, is pretty gray.
It is
Literally.
pretty
Today
gray
it's sunny out, but for the past several days, it's been pretty gray. And so
and cold. It's cold.
and cold. So getting out there, exercising can be difficult. Things that obviously can help improve depression. All right. Things that we can do during the winter are kind of are stunted because of the weather around us. Some people will say that I have the winter blues, right? And this
Seasonal
is
depressive
something,
seasonal
seasonal affective disorder, right?
affective disorder, right. And
Ironically, ironically, it's an
SAD.
acronym that's sad.
So actually, so we have that acronym for SAD. Also, standard American diet is often referred to as SAD.
Yeah,
All
kind
of
of
these
kind
things.
of ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
But I mean, seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. And I think that people sometimes don't recognize that, hey, every fall slash winter, as we're leading into those shorter days, my mood drastically changes. I start feeling down. I start feeling a little unmotivated. And the shorter days, the less sunlight really truly affects us,
And then we've got the holidays at that same time, and it's just a total recipe
You
for
you just
disaster.
you just throw it all together and that's it.
Absolutely.
But these are all treatable things, right? I mean, depression is a treatable illness, right? And I think that that sometimes
And
people
clutter is a treatable symptom.
it is, and so but sometimes people really struggle with seeking help, and so I'm here to tell you, seek help, reach out to somebody, say I'm struggling. People are very, very receptive to that.
Yes, people actually genuinely want to help you, and they want to know how to help you.
Mhm.
And oftentimes we're just at a loss. We don't know how to help other people. So you're doing somebody a favor by saying, "This is how I'm feeling. Is there any way that you can help me?" You're giving them an opportunity to help. And likewise, you can then help them in the future. So, which also really makes you feel good.
Yes, absolutely. Um,
May we're coming to the end of a half an hour, which is, I typically like to keep these around 30 minutes so
yeah, no,
that
I think
people
that's great. I
actually
mean, I think
click on them and watch them.
I think let's just quickly like talk about some things that you can actually do, right?
Okay, yes, that's a great idea.
So, I think like I just mentioned, right, the winter can really hinder our ability to get out there and exercise, but regular exercise can really, really help mitigate your depressive symptoms, right? Your mood can improve tremendously when you exercise. Proper diet, right? Eating can really affect the way you feel. Talking to people, right? Can get out there, talk to people, sleep. What's the quality of your sleep? We already talked about sleep, but sleep, making sure that you're
Critical.
able to
It's
get
critical.
sleep is critical. Avoiding alcohol, right? Alcohol is a depressant. If we're feeling depressed and we drink alcohol, we're likely to feel more depressed, right? So recognizing some of these things that we can do to make very small changes that can actually have a huge impact. Seeking help, like Jess is just saying. Psychotherapy, it's huge. If you need to talk to somebody, go talk to somebody. There are plenty of therapists out there right now. It's real easy to access people online. A lot of things are being done virtually right now. So there's a lot of different apps that you can jump on that aren't that expensive. That
I do
really
think mental health treatment or access to mental health treatment has improved.
where there's new avenues, and I honestly think that the pandemic has been a really, in hindsight, in some ways, it's been a blessing in disguise because we have really looked at how can we do things virtually. Whereas before it was very traditional, you must come in, sit in front of me, and we're going to do a traditional psychotherapy session. That's changed. You can be in your living room while the other person is in an office somewhere or in their home office. It really has given people a lot more access in a lot of ways to mental health treatment. So really seeking that help. There are lots of apps. Headspace is a great app. That can help with meditation and get you like really thinking about how do I meditate. It teaches you. It gives you the exact guide that you
Step
need,
by step.
step
Day
by
1
step.
and
And meditation is huge. It can really be very, very helpful. So there are all these things that you can do, but if you don't know where to start, just ask.
that's the best place. Say, "Hey," ask somebody for help.
Yep,
"I
and
need
at the
support. What can I
end,
do?
yeah,
How can you
what
help
can I
me?
do?
How can I find help?"
And at the end of the day, if your depression is severe, right, there is also medication as an option. And so don't ever think that there's not, right? Because medication is always an option, and that is definitely something that you and your physician should talk about.
Right,
Mhm,
exactly. So many
mhm.
options.
So many options. Just ask. We will guide you and help you get to the place that you need.
Yes, absolutely. We really are here for you. If you're interested in joining one of my groups or programs, you can look at Jess Marcy, Jes Marcy at I'll drop it into the comments. Um, e we're here for you. Moving forward, so Megan and I have a couple of different podcast episodes in this little mini series set up. So we
Mhm.
are also gonna be talking about in the future grief and clutter, trauma and clutter, ADHD and clutter, and did we have another one? I can't remember now.
I think that was it.
Our mental health series.
It is our mental health series,
We
yes.
can talk about anxiety and clutter, but that's also well, we could just keep going. There's just so many connections. So if you are interested in one of those topics, or if you have another topic that you want to hear while I have Megan's attention for the next month, please comment on this video. Let me know. I will do my best to create an episode around that. And if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps us keep our content free and available
Mhm.
to everyone. If you're on a different platform, leave us a review, do whatever you need to do. We really appreciate it. Megan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I'm really excited about this series. I feel like this is such
Yes.
a critical thing to be talking about. And so often we just don't recognize how clutter impacts every area of our life. And I'm thrilled that you're here. So
Yeah,
thank
me
you.
too. You're welcome. You guys have a
All
good
right.
day.
So until next time, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you on the next episode of It's All Clutter. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.